Let's talk a little bit about the offense because obviously Aaron Rodgers being the big storyline coming in. What did PFF think of his performance last year, and what do you think of what this offense could look like with him under center in 2025?
So he was solid last year. I believe he had the 16th best passing grade in the league, which is a decent mark right over the full season. He just had to do it in his own way, right? Because he was among the league leaders in dropbacks. The Jets are behind a lot with their defense struggling, and he had to throw the ball a lot. And what you get with Rodgers that's different from Russell Wilson, who was a few spots higher in passing grade, is Rodgers now is still the master of reading defenses, is going to work to the sticks for the most part, the shorter areas of the field, whereas Wilson had the highest deep passing grade in the NFL last year, but the Steelers struggled to work underneath. So I think it's a difference in style, pretty similar performance in total to Russell Wilson last year, but it wasn't all that efficient with the Jets. That was really the problem because of the way they ran their offense. The explosive plays were missing. It's not that he doesn't still have a good arm. It's just that he doesn't move as much and he doesn't create as many home runs as he used to. So I think the idea of bringing in Rodgers to Pittsburgh is to get a contrast in style and just get first downs more often, at a higher rate than Wilson did, because it was a lot of all or nothing last year in Pittsburgh. Rodgers was decent, just in his own more conservative way.
I think it was Alex Rollins who put out a video breaking down like what Rodgers still does well. And the things that he still does well, you pointed out, diagnosing pre-snap and getting into the quick game, but also after, diagnosing things pre-snap, the long balls, down the sideline. The one thing that is a setback and might draw people back when talking about the Steelers offense is that he doesn't use a lot of the intermediate middle portions of the field because of perhaps because of the high risk of interceptions when throwing to that portion of the field. Arthur Smith likes to do that in his offense. Do you foresee that being an issue?
I think they're going to have to find ways where they can cooperate, right? Because a lot of Pittsburgh and Arthur Smith's middle of the field shots, ideally in his offense, come off of play action. So they've got to get the run game going first and then suck in that second level of the defense and work right behind him. And the Jets, they just never had a cohesive offensive plan last year to do that. So, I don't think it's that Rodgers can't make the throws and can't see over the middle of the field or anything like that. It's just that the Jets never had a plan to do so. So their best plays ended up just being one-on-one go routes on the outside, which sounds a lot more like Pittsburgh and George Pickens and Russell Wilson last year, right? So I think you can go to that anytime you want, but it would benefit them more to have a threat over the middle of the field. And really, Pittsburgh didn't have much of a receiving threat over the middle, especially when Pat Freiermuth was hurt. So I think he can still do that. He can throw to tight ends. He can throw down the seams, but you have to have a coherent plan to do so. It didn't have that with the Jets last year and everything going on with their coaching staff.
Yeah, and I think you just kind of hit the nail on the head there. Like, there's obviously a lot more structure within the Steelers than there is the Jets, and I do think that will benefit him. It'll benefit the offense. I wonder if we see a little bit more gun run stuff because Aaron likes being in the shotgun, so maybe a little bit more like inside zone stuff rather than wide zone, Arthur Smith, it's kind of his signature is under center wide zone runs. But I do think that there can be, I think Art talked about it last year, is not just getting so tunnel vision on like what you do and trying to, being open to incorporating other things while staying true to your core values offensively. If they have that mindset, I think the ceiling can be higher than what it was last year, because overall, I do think that the personnel is better than what it was this time in 2024.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think especially when you talk about having to make those adjustments and the advantage of having an Aaron Rodgers who is the master of his craft, especially when looking at schemes and adjustments at the line of scrimmage, is that he can get you into the right play within the system, right? So I do think he'll be under center a bit. It's going to depend, too, on the lack of mobility or if that looks any better than last year, because we saw even with another guy coming off a torn Achilles and Kirk Cousins last year that they really couldn't get under center with him because he couldn't move, right? If that's the same case with Rodgers, and the Jets weren't under center a whole lot again because they were behind in games last season. But if that's the same case with Rodgers, then you have to make adjustments again for an older quarterback, and you don't want that to limit the playbook either.
In terms of the DK Metcalf, George Pickens switch over, I guess, obviously DK being the number one and Pickens now being in Dallas, do you view that as a significant upgrade, a minor upgrade? How do you view going from Pickens to DK Metcalf?
I look at it as a minor upgrade. I think it's a similar style of receiver, and Metcalf is a little bit better at separating, has maybe a little more in his route tree to him. But I think overall what you're talking about is size, speed, body control, a catch radius type of vertical receivers, right? Which every team needs one of those in your offense. And for 5-6 years now, DK Metcalf has been one of the elite deep receivers in football. So he takes the top off of defense, and I think he adds a little more separation than George Pickens, but I don't see it as a massive upgrade over Pickens, especially considering Pickens was, despite all the, the attitude things and getting shipped out and everything that usually goes on with Steelers receivers, he's a similar type of player who had a really good year last year. I thought Pickens was really good last year. It's just that, again, high variance style of offense, high variance style of receiver. Metcalf offers a little more versatility, so I see it as a minor upgrade that, especially considering the money. If you were going to extend one of them for 5 years, I probably would pick Metcalf.
Yeah, completely agree. In terms of the other weapons around him, though, obviously they just brought in Jonnu Smith while already having Pat Freiermuth with Darnell Washington there as well. I personally don't see him being much of an inline tight end in the offense. I think he'll basically be a slot receiver. What do you make of the addition of Jonnu Smith, obviously coming off a career year, 88 catches, Pro Bowl season? How is he going to fit into what the Steelers are doing here in 2025 with a bunch of new guys coming in?
I think you mentioned it. Don't ask him to block a whole lot because you've already got Freiermuth and you've already got the 280-pound Darnell Washington out there too. You really don't need him to do that. So he's just kind of this versatile weapon. And the advantage to it all is that this is the third time now on the third different team that Jonnu is going to be with Arthur Smith as his play caller, right? Both with Tennessee and with Atlanta. So he knows how to use him. He knows how to use him after the catch. And that's really why he had his best season last year in Miami, is because he got that volume after the catch in Miami's offense, another offense that emphasizes the same sort of thing. So yeah, you almost look at him not even so much as a tight end as you do just another weapon who you can put the ball in his hands, right? You can sneak him into the backfield. You can put him in motion. You can put him in the slot. Just find ways to use him 6 to 8 times a game, and he can make things happen after the catch like he did in Miami last year and like he's done his whole career. The fact that he's been with Arthur Smith twice before is going to make that a whole lot easier.
You look at the ground game as well. They go from Najee Harris, who was high volume, low efficiency. Jaylen Warren, who was a little bit lower volume, high efficiency, going to take over that top running back spot, at least at the beginning of the season, I would think. Caleb Johnson, though, falls to the third round. I don't think a lot of people expected that. The Steelers scoop him up. What do you make of the backfield dynamic, and how do you think those reps will be allocated throughout the year?
I think you're right. I think it'll be Warren a little more early on, especially when you talk about he's a little more of a dual threat, the receiving threat, than Caleb Johnson's going to be early. They didn't throw him the ball. They don't throw the ball at all, really, in the Iowa offense. So that's just kind of how that works over there. But I think what you have is Warren is going to be the lead back in most situations. But Johnson's interesting because the Steelers were one of the teams that I kind of pinned Johnson as a good fit for because of the outside zone scheme. If you watch what they did at Iowa this past year, they got a new offensive coordinator, and they went to a similar outside zone heavy scheme, and he really thrived making one cut, getting north and south, and being the physical one cut back that he can be. So I think there's a lot of times where Johnson is going to thrive, hopefully later in the season, especially as he catches up to the speed of the NFL game, on early downs to really keep you on schedule. I think Johnson's an important player for this offense, especially if Arthur Smith is trying to get back to that Shanahan style outside zone. Johnson's comfortable in it. It's a really good fit for him as an offense. They just got to block in front of him, and then the receiving work probably goes, regardless, the entire season to Warren and even Kenneth Gainwell, who's been a solid receiver throughout his career.